Chess videos. I'm back in my backyard. It's not so windy and smoky and hazy as it has been for the last several weeks. A lot of wildfires. Smokey the Bear says, quit playing with matches out there. Our dry lightning clobbers us. I have a theme here that I want to chessercise with you on purpose. Again, what I'm seeking to do for myself, and therefore you are the lucky direct recipients of this, is I want to give myself an absolute granite, rock solid foundation of chess knowledge, right? I mean, I'm looking to improve my game too, right? So in the process, I'm discovering that even though there is a ton of repeat information in the chess that I'm studying, whether it's in Fred Reinfeld's complete chess course, or whether it's in Jeremy Silman's chess materials, or whether it's playing through Alexander Alekhine games, Aaron Nimzovich's games, Gary Kasparov's games, Anatoly Karpov's games. It doesn't matter how many Grandmaster and Master games I'm playing through, you see the same repeat in many instances. This is not a waste of time. We want this to become second nature to us, right? We want to have such a firm knowledge of certain chess principles that we automatically play the way the masters and grandmasters do. Because obviously the way they play works, right? Here we have a typical Giuoco Piano. In Fred Reinfeld's complete chess course, he's going to emphasize with 4 games, 4 illustrative games, and I love how he explains this. He's emphasizing the serious importance of controlling the center of the board. No, we've heard this. I say this in almost every video I make, right? The cool thing is, we have millions of games showing us hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of different ways to accomplish this. Reinfeld shows 4 different fully illustrated games on this theme that's quite fun, and they're 4 different openings, so that we can learn a little bit about the openings and the philosophy behind the openings and what's happening. So this is the Giuoco Piano. White's intention in the Giuoco Piano is to gain a broad pawn center. And the way he's going to do this is pushing the pawn to queen 4. This is the philosophy of the Giuoco Piano, just so you know. If you knew that already, great. If you didn't, hot dang, you've learned something new already, right? 2 minutes into my squawking and you've learned something extra about chess. Black, in the Giuoco Piano, has to fight for the center region. If he neglects it because of the nature of the opening, the way the knights are, the pawn formation, the bishop's development, etc., Black can get trounced if he ignores the center. One way that he can fight for the center is going to be developing his other knight, the second knight. Why? Look. Just observe the board. The knights hit the central squares. The knights hit the central squares. The pawn is hitting central squares. The bishop is in a central diagonal. This is how you want it. White is doing the same thing. His knight is hitting the central squares. His bishop is hitting the central diagonal, right? When White develops this way with the knight, and then, Black, and then White brings the pawn up, watch what happens. Pawn takes the pawn. Pawn takes the pawn. Bishop comes to knight 5 check. Bishop comes to queen 2. Are you watching this? Bishop takes the bishop. The queen knight takes the bishop, and now black has this response. Pawn to queen 4. And what this does is it retains a center presence for black. He doesn't completely lose control of the center if he'll play this way. You notice white has the majority of the pawns in the center, right? That's one of the imbalances in this particular situation, right? So black has to establish himself in the center like this. If he doesn't do this, he's going to get mowed over. And you say, well, wait a minute. He doesn't maintain his presence in the center, though. The pawn can take the pawn. Look. He does maintain his presence in the center. And you say, no, he doesn't, Professor. He doesn't stay maintained in the center. And I say, yes, he does. He maintains a center presence. This is critical if we want to improve our chess games. We have to learn as many possible ways to fight for the center. Now let me show you what black really did in this particular game that completely blew it for him. You've seen one possible way that he can maintain his presence in the center. Now let's say the queen comes up to here, or put him here and put him in check in the king, right? Now the bishop has a chance to come up and block the check, right? And then let's say king castles here, let's say white castles, and let's say the black castles. There's still a central presence here. You see that? Very understanding, very critical to understand. Now let me show you what black did to blow it this way and how he got completely blown off the board. It's time to take a sip of my, this is root beer. I could act as drunk as you can get by drinking root beer because this stuff's so good to me. So even though I'm swigging down root beer, I'm not as think as you drunk I am. Besides, I don't drink real beer, but I can act as drunk as you can get. We ought to get together and have a chess game or two, and you drink and I'll drink my root beer, and we'll see who plays better chess. Here's what black did that was a mistake. Queen to king 2. And you say, well, come on, he's developing a piece. Yes, but it has nothing to do with maintaining a presence in the center. I love how this unfolds step by step, so that we can see it. Pawn to queen 4. You know that as white is what he's going to do in the Giuoco Piano. Now the bishop pops back down to knight 3. He's being pushed, right? And of course, white's going to castle. You want to castle early. I've said that a trillion times in every video, and I'm truly serious. Knight, bishop 3. Okay, look. He's bringing out his knight now, but he's too far behind. Now the rook grabs the open file. Well, the file that could be open, I should say. It's not open yet. Pawn to queen 3. Notice this. Notice the one difference compared to that variation I showed you. The pawn does not come up to 4 now. He's in a defensive mode. He comes up 1 to defend a pawn. And it's a disaster. It's really fascinating to see how this unfolds like this. Pawn, queen, rook 4. Pawn, queen, rook 3. Notice how timid black is being. Knight, rook 3. I know, a knight on the rim is dim. That is true. Bishop, knight 5, coming out to put the question to the bishop, pinning the knight to the queen. Right? Now, if he can attack that knight some way, he can win it. That's the effect of the tactic of the pinned piece, right? Now the knight comes back to bishop 2, so he didn't leave it on the rim. He's specifically going to put this knight in a great central spot. Black finally gets to castle. Always a good thing to do. Now watch. Knight, king 3, and you say, yeah, however, in some of your other videos, you clown, you've been telling us that it's not a good idea to move the same piece 4 and 5 times. True. However, there's always exceptions. Look at the board. For one thing, black has played timid, right? He's not fighting for the center right now. He's playing a defense. He's playing timid. He's playing small moves. He hasn't brought any of his pieces out other than his bishop that is really in a attack fighting mode, right? You can see that. You got to watch this bishop. So white has maneuvered his knight to a fantastic central location. The center is all white's. He gets to call all of the shots. Because of the way he set this up, he is stifling all of black's pieces. This is fun to see here. Well, bishop, bishop, where are you? Knight to king 3. Bishop comes back to bishop 1. He attacked the knight and he drops the bishop back to his original square. Not a good thing to do. Now, white has the power in the center, right? Again, he's going to move a knight again. However, look at the effect. Knight to queen 5. Pow! Queen goes back to queen 1. See, it's almost as if black is in reverse now, isn't it? Look at the overwhelming space advantage. Again, our imbalances. Keep in mind our imbalances. Development, much better. Black almost is going backwards in his development, isn't he? Yes. He's not got a lot of central influence, no. He also doesn't have a lot of space. Two imbalances here, development and space, central space, right? This is what we always want to train ourselves to think. And it takes you just a couple of seconds. You don't have to sit there for half an hour doing all this. Bishop comes up to king knight 5. Now he puts the pin on, right? Well, the pawn takes the pawn in the center, the only center pawn that he has, and the pawn takes the pawn. Now look at the difference compared to that first variation. White still maintains his very powerful presence in the center with both central pawns. Black has a central pawn missing, and he virtually has no oomph, no clout here. And now, bishop again comes out, bishop knight 5. 1, 2, 3 of his moves to accomplish nothing. Very instructional. What he wants to do is try to consolidate the center now. He's going to try to start simplifying things. Watch how white takes care of this. This is perfect chess. Pawn, king, 5. What does he have, you guys? He has a superior development. Okay? What else does he have, you guys, imbalances-wise? Central space. What is he doing, you guys? He's doing what Silman tells us to do for our day and generation. When you have a positive imbalance, make it better, stronger. So he's going forward. And what does this do? What does this do? Well, the bishop does take the knight. Black is starting to realize he's getting outclassed. Queen takes the bishop. White's development is vastly superior to anything black's got right now. Knight is going to take the queen pawn, threatening the queen here. But watch what white has because he's so much better off now. Does white have to retreat because he's being threatened? Go back down to the queen 1? Not on your life. White brings that queen right over to king, rook 3. Ooh. Things are getting hot. Well, black again takes a pawn, and I know what you're saying. Well, see, he's nibbling away at white's center. He is starting to establish a central influence. He did bring a good outpost for that knight, but it's too little too late. Watch the effect here. The bishop takes the knight, the pawn takes the bishop, and we see the first weakening of black's king side. Right? Now we've got a weak h6 square because this pawn moved. You see that? Now we have a potential open file because that pawn had to take a piece because of the superior development and the emphasis on forward movement of white. Right? The imbalances, they work. This stuff works. Bishop take knight, pawn takes the bishop, and now it's simple. Queen rook 6 and black resigned. And you go, what? So quick? Yeah, so quick. Can you see what else he's going to do? This is astonishing. Why? Because there's nothing he can do to prevent this move. And now it's curtains. Right? Because he had the superior development? Because he stuck with the center, and because he used his central space, white won that. That's a great illustration, isn't it? I've got another one for you I want to show you. In this illustration, we're treated to the Sicilian defense. It's a venerable defense. It's been around for quite a while. There's a lot of grandmasters and masters and international masters that use this opening. It's a very powerful opening. It's a good opening to know in a repertoire. Knight takes the pawn here, and then the knight comes up to king bishop 3. You notice how they're developing their knights. They're keeping their central pawns. This is typical Sicilian. He's going to fianchetto his bishop to give him the long diagonal down there, which is always a good thing. He's preparing to castle. He's preparing to castle. Bishop comes up to king 3. He's getting his powers out just as fast as he knows how. You notice this? They are developing in lightning speed, which is always good. Black castles. So if black's not careful at this point, he's going to be overrun here, because look at what white starts doing. Pawn bishop 4. Now he's bringing up more central space, right? Now the other knight comes out, properly develops knight bishop 3, right? Now the knight comes to knight 3 at this point, and the bishop comes to king 3. So they're developing. He's getting a good solid defensive base here. And now pawn comes to knight 4. Now, there's no guesswork at this point, is there? Look at the board. Look at what white is doing. How should black respond to this? It's obvious that if black doesn't do something, he is going to get mowed over, right? He is obviously pushing. He's got a magnificent pawn structure right there, and he's going forward. He's pushing. According to Reinfeld, the correct move is again pawn queen 4. Hit the center. You must fight this. You can't let him mow you over. Instead, what does black do? Black puts his knight to queen 2. He plays a completely passive defensive move. And because of this, white says, cool, pawn king rook 4. Now you're probably starting to break a sweat if you're playing black. You're going, holy cow, he's not stopping. So black tries to put up a pawn bishop 4, right, to try to break up this complete pawn roller, and white proceeds onward with the rook pawn. Now the knight comes up to bishop 4. He's going to hit this pawn, and he's hitting this pawn again, right? But it's easily covered at that point. And now the rook pawn takes the rook pawn. And the rook pawn takes the rook pawn. And the knight pawn takes the pawn, and the pawn takes the pawn, And now queen comes up to queen 2. Because, now look at the board. The king is completely obliterated in his cover. He no longer has any cover because white has stuck it to the center, and because of his extra kingside space, he has an open file directly at the kingside. He's got easy access with his bishops once this pawn exchanges one way or the other, or else he'll keep pushing his pawns. His queen's going to come up into the action. Wow, the neglect of the center is going to cost black if he's not very careful, if it hasn't already. Well, what's the best thing he can do? He takes the pawn. Pawn takes the pawn again. Now white castles to the queen's side, because now look at the rooks. He's got open files here and here, and the king over here has nothing except a lone bishop. Notice, a lot of black's pieces are over here, kind of away from the king. Watch how fast white consolidates this. Now, the knight takes the knight, puts the king in check, puts a great fork on the king and the queen. That's a beautiful knight fork, right? That's not a bad move. The bishop pawn takes the knight, so now he's doubled his pawns. He's kind of trying to break up the queenside castling of white, right? He's trying to get some counterplay, which is what he's got to do, because he's in deep trouble over here. He has to take white's eye off of the goal of the king side. So he's got to try to develop some quick counterplay. He has to play energetically and fast, but he's too little too late. Rook comes over to bishop 1. Again, he's trying to grab the central file straight across from the king. Black is trying to develop some counterplay because he realizes he's blown it in the center, right? Queen rook goes to knight 1. Uh-oh. Ominous storm clouds are gathering on the horizon. These two are cumulonimbus. That's their name in this game. Those are storm clouds heading for that king. This is nasty for black. So black has to put it together quick. He brings his bishop up to bishop 4. Bishop comes up to bishop 4 check. Already he's crisscrossing the king. This is not good for black, right? You can see again, these squares are off center, are off, yeah. Those are no good for the king. So he's in check here. What's the only thing he can do? Well, he can put the pawn to king 3, right? Queen comes over to rook 2. Now, there's no question at this point in time what's happening, right? This is a full-fledged attack at black because of his faulty play of not storming that center and allowing white such a powerful kingside development and thrust with his pawns that obliterated his kingside. Queen comes up here to bishop 3. Well, okay, he looks like he's getting a little more cover. I mean, quite frankly, you can't come up here to knight 4, so you got to stop there, I suppose, right? Knight to queen 5. And you go, really? It's a great central move, but it's covered. What's he doing? Pawn takes the knight. This is so interesting how this unfolds. Notice how white does this. Bishop takes the queen pawn, check. He's pried open the center, sacrificing his knight so that he can still get to the black king. This is great chess, isn't it? Bishop comes back to king 3. He's running out of options, isn't he? Because his king can't run anywhere. the file's double covered here. This is looking brutal, right? Bishop takes bishop. Check. That pesky bishop just keeps going, doesn't he? Queen takes the bishop, and notice how it takes the queen away from helping defend the king with this bishop. He central developed with the knight, sacrificing the knight. He brought his bishop into the center, and he's been pulling black's pieces away because white's been dominating the center and playing from the center. Now, he's got all the power on the wing. Down here, stupid, you've got all of these open files in great attack. You've got the bishop pinned. You've got the file. You've got the queen doubled with the rook. But he continually uses his minor pieces in the center to pry away more defenders because he dominates the center. That's fantastic. Pow! Rook takes bishop. Check. You go, wow, that is awesome. King takes the rook, and now look who's coming home for dinner. This is so amazing. Queen, rook 7. Check. King comes up to bishop 3. And now, rook 6. Mate. He had all the power on the side and the wings. Well, for the last several moves, right? He could have easily gone and attacked it, except the king did have that bishop, and the queen was able to come over here along with that rook. So he uses his minor pieces and still attacks in the center and draws the defenders away. And then he comes through the side door. I love that. That's awesome. So there's two excellent games showing us the vitality of the center, the vitality of playing in the center, the vitality of fighting for the center. There's not a grandmaster, an international master, or a master out there who will ever disagree with that philosophy, that theory. We call it theory, but we've got millions of games backing this up, that when you fight for the center as if it's your life depending on it, your chess improves. So I've given you the open secret. All of the Russian grandmasters use this, all the American grandmasters, all the Ukrainian, the Indian, and the Australian, and the Russian, and the African, and the Mexican, and the Canadian masters and grandmasters use this. It doesn't have to be a particular time of day. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. It's irrelevant what your skin color is. It doesn't matter what nation you exist in. Every one of the great players will develop their entire army, and they will fight for the center. And if they can do it, we can. So thanks for watching my Backyard Professor Chess videos. I'm going to emphasize in the next video also, I'm going to label these videos the Center Part 1, the Center Part 2, because there's two other games that I really want to illustrate for you in my next video also. So keep your eye peeled for Part 2 in this Chessercise series on the center. And happy Chessercising, happy checkmating, and I'm going to shut up so I can go make my next video for you. And I'll see you there.